This is Market Wrap with Mo Ansari.
Welcome back, everyone, to Market Wrap. I'm Mo Ansari, president of Compact Asset Management, and you're tuned in as you've been doing so for nearly 2 decades now. And as always, you can call in, and I will be more than happy to share with you my 33 years of trading experience. Anything that you want to know about any of these markets, financial questions that you have, what you're doing with your portfolio, feel free to call. Government is making more and more decisions in our life, and we have to really come up with some solutions, especially to the huge budget deficits we have nationally and here in the state of California. On our guest line is Mr. Tom Campbell, Republican candidate for governor for the state of California. Mr. Campbell is the former director of finance for California. He is also the former dean of the Haas Business School at UC Berkeley. Mr. Campbell is a former legislator, having served 5 terms as a member of the U.S. Congress representing districts in California's Silicon Valley. And a little-known fact is, while he was earning his bachelor's and graduate degrees in economics at the University of Chicago, Mr. Campbell's faculty advisor was my top interview that I've ever had, Dr. Milton Friedman. Mr. Campbell, welcome back to Market Wrap.
Thank you, Mo. A pleasure to be with you always.
Tom, let's start with the state of California, and that really is, sort of a model of what happens to the rest of the states. I know some of the other states that are tuned in right now, Nevada and Arizona, and some of the other states might not agree with me totally, but financially it sort of goes from what happens here in California. It sort of shows up in a lot of the other states. We are in a big mess here in all of California right now. How are we going to resolve this? I mean, I would like to see a constitutional amendment where we can get the budget process sort of has been taken over by the extreme right and the extreme left, and we just can't get the budget done. But if we can go to, because we have to have a 2/3 majority, if we can go to sort of a majority vote on that. But what scares me about that, if we start getting majority votes, then the taxes can be also increased by majority votes, and that could be a big problem.
Well, you described it absolutely right. I think the best way to go here for the long term is to adopt a rule, and we can do this by the constitutional amendment if necessary, that you don't spend more than you have. And it seems almost straightforward, so simple. Why do we need a rule? Well, that's because we budget on the basis of optimism, Mo. People in the legislature are not subjected to Sarbanes-Oxley. There's no CPA attestation requirement. There's no auditor saying, here's what the numbers really are. So you can budget on the basis of what you want or have some basis to believe the revenue will be. So the clearest fix would be to do what a couple of states do. Collect our taxes in 1 year, let them earn interest, and then not spend it till the next year, so that there is no disagreement. Democrats and Republicans can disagree over what to spend it on, but not on the amount of money. I think that can be implemented. Obviously, you'll need an uptick in revenue for a year to get that started. Second, the long term, we used to have a rule very similar to what you're proposing. It said 2/3 for a tax increase, but 1/2 a vote for the budget, provided the budget does not increase spending more than the growth of population and inflation would require. And that gives a nice incentive then for the majority party not to go above those limits. So you have a natural cap on the growth of expenditure. I take either of those two improvements.
And how do we retain businesses? Because we are continuing to raise taxes, and that is really hurting businesses. It is hurting the small businesses, and a lot of businesses are just deciding, look, it is not worthwhile to be moved here. They're moving out. They're moving to Arizona. They're moving to Nevada.
Well, you're right, and the long-term reason is most frequently cited is the regulatory burden that we impose on those who want to offer jobs in California, but Texas offers a much more conducive regulatory context. Also, you're right to mention taxes. We're number 1 in sales tax, and number 1 in income tax, and even though we have Prop 13, we're number 10 among all 50 states on the average amount that people pay in real estate tax, because the underlying property values are so high in California, even after the drop in these values. So getting taxes down is essential. And what I've been saying in my campaign is we need to get a budget system where we don't spend more than we have, and then we need to begin to spend less, and for the dollars that we diminish the expenditure, we can diminish the taxes. But businesses with jobs to offer know that if they're in a state where the state budget is always out of balance, and we always are in a crisis, that sooner or later they'll be made to pay. And so a state like Texas looks good to them.
So we can take this sort of thing national and look at the national budget. It's the same thing. We are continuing to spend more and more and more. But that's very easy to say and very hard to do, as you know, to cut expenditures. Where can we cut expenditures in California? The governor said, look, we've got to shut down the prisons, let all the prisoners out, and we've got to cut the police force, so we won't have any police force, or very little, and we can have a lot less of the paramedics and the fires. And if we cut any more, where can we cut right now?
Well, you mentioned both federal and state, so I'd like to do the same in my answer. At the federal level, we used to have Graham-Rudman, and that system set a target for expenditure reductions, actually just capping the growth of expenditures. And if Congress wouldn't hit those targets, then across-the-board cuts would go into effect. And Mo, the effect of just having that was that we actually balanced the budget the last year that I was in Congress, in 2000. We actually balanced the budget. And so the federal government, I think the answer is a restoring Graham-Rudman, have an automatic across-the-board mechanism that fills in if the Congress does not restrain the growth rate of spending. Now, moving to the state, we could do the same. In fact, I drafted the initiative that went to the people. I drafted the version that went to the legislature, but it went to the people as Proposition 76. And it was defeated in 2005, along with all the other initiatives that were on the ballot. Governor Schwarzenegger put together a package, and they were all defeated. He deserves credit for trying, by the way. I think we should note that. But the times were good. The economy was good, and people didn't realize that we needed to create a long-term system like I just described. And here's what it would have done. In fact, if we'd adopted it then, we would not be in the problem we're in today. Every year when we have a good revenue year, the increase in revenue above what's needed for the previous year plus population and inflation goes into a reserve. And that reserve cannot be rated unless you have a bad year. And if you run out of time and you have no budget at the end of the current budget year, you just keep the old budget until you get a new one. And if revenue falls so that you don't have enough money for the old budget levels, then if the legislature can't fix it in 45 days, do the same thing as Graham-Rudman, have across-the-board cuts. So that's a system that we can adopt in California. It was on the ballot in Proposition 76 in 2005. If I get to be governor, I'll certainly want to support trying that again. But I'll also just want to use the line-item veto. The line-item veto allows you to bring down the expenditures to the level of actual revenue that we have. And you asked for specifics, so I want to give one last idea here. If the federal government would give us a waiver, and a lot of this has to do with getting the federal government to give us a lot more freedom in California. The amount of money spent on health care in California by the federal and the state government together is $42 billion every year.
Right.
And we could afford what we're spending for the needy, those with pre-existing conditions, and the Healthy Families Program, at a net savings of about $1,000 a beneficiary if we could just go in the private market and buy a health care policy. So that would save us upwards of $8 billion. But in order to do it, we'd need to have the federal government say, it's okay, California, for you to do this. So long term, you've got to figure a way to stop spending more than we have. Short term, let the federal government give us a waiver to approach our health care needs on our own.
Mr. Campbell, I can talk about this for hours. It's such a big problem here in California, and some of the solutions that you're talking about, I hope we get them done, because we are in dire need, not only here in California, but nationally, to come up with some solutions. We cannot spend ourselves into prosperity. That's what some people are trying to do.
You got that right.
It just does not work.
At the federal level, let me just say there's a real danger of inflation as soon as the economy comes back. Because, Mo, we have printed more than $2.7 trillion of new money. The Federal Reserve Board has expanded its balance sheet by more than $1 trillion. That is a huge potential inflation, and it's not far away.
Mr. Campbell, I want to thank you. I know you're very, very busy, for taking the time out and sharing your thoughts with us and giving us some really concrete ideas how we can change the system here in California and nationally and start moving in the right direction. Thank you again for being with us today.
Thanks from me to you, and you run a great program. I listen to you all the time.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you again for being with us.
A pleasure.